Yep.
Okay. All right, here we go. So this is your Poolish. Can you get a close-up of that? And I've already told you how to do that. But it's 100 grams of the starter, 150 grams of flour and water mixed in and left overnight. And it gets all bubbly and it smells good. Okay. I have five cups of warm water in here in the bowl. And you take your last cup of warm water, pour it right in there on top of it. Kind of scrape the side of the container and it'll just pour out into the water. Alright. If it's floating like that, can you get it close? Yeah. If it's floating like that, that's good. That's a good sign. Okay, so you add to that a couple of teaspoons of yeast into that water. Okay.
Make sure it's good yeast.
Make sure it's good yeast. Instant yeast, alright. Whisk that in, right? Break up all those little clumps of that Poolish. You can use your hand or you can use a whisk. Sometimes I'll go back later and make sure it's broken up, but for now that's good. And that makes a nice mixture, and you just set that aside for a minute while you do the flour. Okay? So let that sit for a bit. And then in here, I have this is for 4 loaves, by the way. I have 6 cups of all-purpose flour in there, okay? And then in with that, you put 2 tablespoons of salt. And that's all you need in there. And then you use your other 6 cups are going to be some of this stuff that are on the counter. So I have a red fife flour here, I have an einkorn, I have a barley, and in here I have a rye. So you can use any combination you want. I usually use 2 cups of the red fife because it's sort of like regular flour, but it's got a little bit of a whole wheat texture to it. So I use 2 cups of that, and then an einkorn, which is kind of a good, nutritious old grain. So that's 3 cups, and that's 4 cups, and that's 5 here. So we're a cup short, so we need 1 more cup of something. I think I'll just use the einkorn, which is pretty good. Sometimes I use spelt, which I'm out of spelt, I think. So anyways, doesn't really matter what combination you use. No more than 50% of the hard grains. The rest of it should be about 50% all-purpose, and the rest can be whatever grain you want. You could use all whole wheat if you wanted to, but I like the barley a lot, and I like the einkorn and the red fife. So mix that up really good, and just make sure that's all combined well in there together. Start combining your flour into the water, not the other way around, okay? Because what you want to do is you want to get it to the right consistency, and you can never add more water, but you can always add more flour if you need to. So I usually put about half of the flour in there, something like that. Get that sort of going. Mix that up well. And the longer you go with this, the more difficult it gets to mix it. But once you got that sort of mixed, start putting in the rest here. Another half of it, about half again, and then stir it in. I don't know if you plan on using a bread maker, but I don't use a bread maker, so I really don't know how to do that. I'm sure you could probably, they have all kinds of recipes for bread makers, but we're doing it the old-fashioned way. Because that's what Melissa likes, the old-fashioned bread. Just keep mixing that up until it starts to come together. Starts to get pretty hard to stir. when it starts combining. And then you can put some more. Usually don't put all of it, because what you're trying to do is get the right consistency here. So now at this point, you're kind of stuck with using your hands, which is kind of messy. But some flour on your hands here, and start folding it in over and over. Kind of scrape it from the sides. Oh yeah, I didn't put any hemp hearts in it. It's okay. You can add hemp hearts if you want. I forgot to do it because I'm filming. A little more flour in there. And basically you just keep working this in little bits at a time. And I just keep folding it in like that in the bowl, because if you put it on the counter right now, it's hard to deal with. And bring that together and keep doing that until it sort of looks like this. It's kind of lumpy and flaky. And then leave it. All right, we're back. Okay, so I had this covered in the bowl. Keep it kind of warm for about 15 to 20 minutes.
To cover
Just
from.
a cover from a pan. You can use whatever you want to cover, as long as it's kind of like glass or plastic, but anyway, we just use that. So now it's sort of been sitting and resting for a bit in the bowl, and we're going to take it out. Supposedly this thing makes this easier. Missy got this tool for me. So we dump it out onto the counter at this point. And now we'll start kneading it for the first time. And I have some flour in the bowl here just to use for your hands and for the counter. And I just sort of just fold it over like that a few times until it, and the more you do this, as you do it, it'll start getting less and less flaky and more cohesive as the gluten starts coming together and forming long strands instead of clumps like it was when you put it in the bowl. That's what I hear anyway. A little more flour on there. You don't need to use more flour than you need, but you need to use enough to keep it manageable. So already you can see it's starting to smooth out. It's getting out of that flaky stage. Now at this point I start kind of stretching it a bit like that, folding it over, stretching it, folding it.
Slapping it.
Slapping it. Sometimes I get the kids in here to punch it because they like to do that, not because it makes better bread. And then just keep doing that. And you want to keep on folding it and kneading it for a while on this first go. You need to keep adding flour as needed to keep it from sticking. A little bit on the countertop here. And just enough to kind of make it manageable. All right, sometimes you can I keep stretching it every now and then like that, pull it up like that. Kind of use the weight of the bread to stretch it a bit. At this stage it doesn't stretch real well because that gluten's not really formed yet that well. But when you do the next kneading after it's risen, it'll be way more stretchy. They may be anywhere 5 to 10 minutes. Probably more is better. You can't really overdo it too much, I don't think, but coming together well. Okay, so after we get done, I'm going to do a little bit more kneading, but what I do with that is I use this bowl I had it in before. I put a little bit of flour in the bowl, a little bit of flour on top, sprinkle it, put it back in the bowl, and I'll put the lid back on, okay? Once you do that, you get your lid back on there or your plastic wrap, put it in a warm spot, close to the fire or close the sunny window, and leave it there until it's about doubled in size. Sometimes it even comes up and blows the lid off the thing. It's so active. But anyway, about double in size, and then we'll come back and we'll do another knead. Okay? Okay, here, you can see now this has risen to about twice its size that it was. So we're going to scrape it out onto the counter. Oh, this took about hour and a half or 2 hours today. About an hour and a half in a sunny window. So that's pretty good. Sometimes it doesn't rise quite that fast. But anyway, once it gets to about the top of the bowl, you just start scraping it out with whatever you have. I got this scraper that's sort of not working that well. I'm just going to use my hand. Okay. So you turn it out onto the counter. And then you're going to knead it again, just like you did before. Now this time it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be a lot more loose. As you can see, it's quite loose, okay? And we're going to fold it. I usually pull a corner out like that, fold it in, a little bit of flour, pull the corner in, give it a good push down, and you're just going to keep doing this, okay, for about 5 minutes or so, or until you get sick of doing it, which is usually what happens to me. And then once I get kind of tired of it, it's going to be a nice ball like that. Okay, I'm going to do it some more, but once you get it kneaded down for about 5 minutes, you're going to go back in the bowl, flour the bowl up a little bit, and put it back in the bowl. Cover the bowl again with a lid like that, back in the window, let it rise again, okay? That's it for now. We'll be back to put it in the pans after it rises again. This is a really important part of the bread making process because it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you just do this. This is really important. And then we'll get on to putting the bread in the pan, which I'll show you next. Thanks. Did you start? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Okay, as you can see, this has now been in the window with the lid on for about an hour and a half. So this is rising really fast, which is great. Okay, so this is our second rise. Okay, and we're ready to put it in the pan. So I do a little bit of flour in my hands, and we're gonna scrape it out as we did before. Okay, so get it all scraped out, back onto the surface, and the next step we're going to do now is we're going to have to divide this up. Okay, so this is the 4-loaf recipe. So there's enough dough here for 4. So I'm going to go ahead and knead it again, just like we did before. Okay, same process again. We're going to pull it, we're going to fold it, okay, and we're going to push it down, all right? And it's really coming together nice now, okay? A little bit of extra flour to keep everything from sticking, all right? And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to knead this for a while longer, just a few more minutes, and then I'll be back and show you what we're doing next. And I divided it into 4 equally weighed pieces. Now, if you don't want to weigh it, you don't have to, but it is, I like to weigh it because then I know exactly that each loaf is going to come out about the same size. If you don't weigh it, and you just eyeball it, you may have one loaf that's coming out quite a bit bigger than the other. So anyway, so then I just take each one. These came out to about 840 to 850 grams each, and that's usually what happens with this recipe, depending on the weight of your different flours you use. The harder grains tend to weigh a little. They all have different weights by volume. So, but usually they're going to be somewhere between 800 and 850 per loaf of grams. So, anyway, so I just take these like this. I just knead them a little bit, make them into like a oblong shape, kind of shape them like that, And then I put them in these greased pottery pans. I just lightly oil it and then pop them right in there, okay? And I do each one like that, all right? And just knead them briefly here, get them into shape. Same kind of thing you did before with the big loaf, or with the big dough ball. And I tend to just kind of smush it down like that and keep rolling it until it looks sort of like a hoagie shape, something like that. And then just pop it in the pan, okay? So I'll do these other two. We'll get those in the pan. We'll lightly put a little flour on top, okay, to keep the cloth from sticking. And I'll be right back once I get the others panned, and I'll show you what we do on the final step, okay? All right, here we have our bread. It's risen now to a pretty good level above the pan, and we're ready to bake it. Back soon. All right, so we've got our 4 loaves in the oven now. They're all risen. I sprayed them with a little bit of water to crisp them up, and they're gonna bake. So these now have baked for about 25 or 30 minutes. This oven was pretty hot today, so it's probably a little faster than some, but all the ovens, of course, vary a bit, and you may need to play with those cooking times. Could be anywhere from 25 to 40 minutes, depending on how hot you cook it. And they should just pop right out of the pans. They shouldn't really stick. I had a problem in the beginning, didn't I, with them sticking. And the problem was I wasn't cooking them long enough. And once I started cooking them a little bit longer, that problem went away. So then I just put them on these racks to dry, to cool off. And then once they're cool, that takes about an hour. You can freeze them or cut it up and enjoy it. And here's the finished product in all of its glory. Now, some people put little slash marks down the side or down the middle of the bread. I did that a little bit, but really it doesn't serve much purpose, so I quit doing it. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.